I would like to introduce tonight's speaker, Jaki Shelton Green. Jaki Shelton Green is the first African-American and the third woman to be appointed as the North Carolina Poet Laureate. She is a 2019 Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellow, 2014 North Carolina Literary Hall of Fame inductee, a 2009 North Carolina Piedmont Laureate appointee, and a 2003 recipient of the North Carolina Award for Literature. She is a professor of documentary poetry at Duke University Center for Documentary Studies and has been named the 2021 Frank B. Haynes Writer in Residence at UNC Chapel Hill. She's also the owner of Sister Write. She provides retreats for women writers in Sedona, Arizona, Martha's Vineyard, Ocracoke, North Carolina, Northern Morocco, and Tullamore, Ireland. So without further ado, I am going to turn tonight's presentation over to Jaki Shelton Green, and there you are.
Thank you so much to the library, to Yvette, to everyone. Thank you all for showing up on a rainy Saturday evening. I hope you have on like really cute socks. Okay, so National Poetry Month, here we are. Not only is it National Poetry Month, but we're also in this season of uncertainty, the season of sorrow, the season of blemish, the season when we're all frightful and looking for our way in the dark. So I'm going to read some poems that I think about in the spirit of James Baldwin, who has always urged us to write about the times that we live in as writers and as artists, to make art that reflects the times that we live in. But first, I'm going to read two poems from one of my publications, which is entitled Breath of the Song, New and Selected Poems. I'd like to give a shout out to Judy Hogan, who is on this Zoom tonight. Judy is the founder of Carolina Wren Press, which is now Blair Publications. But it was many, many, many years ago in the early 70s when Judy Hogan published me. And I am very, very grateful that she remains in our greater community. And she's a dear, dear friend, dear cohort, dear sister, dear guide. Thank you, Judy. Conjure Blues. Are you sure you want to travel this red rope here? Blood locks dripping history like a faucet without gaskets. Are you sure you want to travel this path of kinky trails, interlaced with the breath of Ghanaian ghost? This rope hair, coarse, this rope hair, full of tears, this rope hair braiding little splintered brains in Alabama, binding arms back to torsos in Johannesburg. This rope hair, wrapping knives inside of babies' blankets, planting bullets under sunflower beds. Rope hair, red rope hair, which wraps and unwraps your nighttime fears, your white years of guilt, your nighttime taste of Black lace, Black woman love, Black braids, unbraiding, unleashing, unforgiving. Red rope hair, point to this cloud, wish upon this star, swinging from red rope hair, a lynching or a suicide. Red rope hair, strangling your truths, my legacy, our pain, choking our offspring. Red rope hair, a road, crawl only, no running. Now I lay you down to sleep. Red rope hair, stealing you at sunrise. A sun crucifix, a sun snake, racing, falling, sleeping, blood rope. As a documentarian and a person who is very much steeped in research and finding the poems inside of stories that sometimes come out of research, stories that have been given to me, hand-me-down stories. The next poem is really about a photograph, a primary source for documentary poetry, a photograph that always sat on my grandmother's piano in her front room. So those of us who are Southern know what the front room was, that room that we seldom used, that elders only used for holidays, for funerals, special times. But the photograph was a photograph that all my childhood I would ask, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? And no one would answer. When my grandmother died and we gathered back to the living room after her funeral, we were all sitting in the room, and I looked at my uncle and I looked at the photograph, and I was in my 20s then, and I said, I demand to know who this is. And the story is, it was my great-grandfather. But it's written in the voice of my mother, who did not tell me the story, but I have chosen, and I'm sorry, I just screwed that up. It was my great-grandfather. I always get these grandfathers and grandmas and great-grandmas and it was my great-grandfather, forgive me. Written in the voice of my mother, if she had written this. Segregated rainbows. 1, 2 voices, my mom's voice and my voice. You will hear my voice, you will hear her voice. Segregated rainbows. 1, 1932, somewhere over the South Carolina border, a yellow dress becomes canvas, witness to colorless dreams that appear beneath my grandmother's smile. Standing together under protective, moonless, starless sky, blonde and black hair touching, daring the air, daring oceans between them. My grandparents clasp hands, stare into the invisible lens of an invisible camera. They stare straight ahead into an erect future, cross burnings, slashed tires, backyard clotheslines torched, dead cats hurled through windows. 2, 1953, I am born, granddaughter, the color of coral, ripened peaches, brown hair that rolls up into little rivers. I entered this world carrying grandmother's birthmark, the same arrow pointing east inside her left thigh. I grow my father's smile when I cry. I grow the gray stone wolf eyes of grandfather. When I am 7, my tears teach me grandfather's language. 3, I grow into the arrow inside my left thigh. I grow hair, breast for the wind's daughter. I grow hips, teeth for the moon's wife. 4, I become the yellow dress, patched, blood-stained, hidden. I become the ground somewhere over the South Carolina border, receiving their dance, their prayer. I become blonde, black hair bleeding together. I become their hands loving in and out of season. I become their land, fertilized by miscarried, aborted ashes. I am the life they could not birth, they could not name, they could not call home. 5, my grandmother teaches me other languages: archery, piano, ballet, seduction, rivalry. My mother teaches me to be her, not become the arrow inside my left thigh. She demands that I cease walking, talking with wolves. 6, grandfather's obituary did not mention my grandmother as his wife, my mother as his daughter, my uncle as his son. The wrinkled, worn news clipping chronicles in every chronicles and keeps the evidence of your memories. The smell of antique leather, expensive cigars, expensive smiles, collections of leather-bound books, photo albums, bank portfolios. New jazz brews inside of you like chocolate wrapping licorice sticks. 7. I am the crying wolf, warrior without tribe. My inkwell spills dust-coated ink, meant for a hidden canvas, moth-eaten, evicting shadows of another likeness, another moth-eaten revenge. 8. I become sword of the grandfather, become another trophy, memory, Persian rooms, satin afternoons, tea biscuits, polite assassinations, sexual innuendos, piano recitals, lullabies, and proper cheers. I am the granddaughter, witness to the incest of rain and snow, witness to this betrayal of shadows. 9. We bury yellow dresses, deeds, birth certificates. We bury swords, teeth, segregated deaths. We bury questions, reprisals, birthrights. 10. Every morning, the wolf visits my yard, and I remember to feed him. So it's really weird looking at all the little blank boxes, but I know you're there. I'm going to read one more poem before reading from poetry that has recently been choreographed by the Justice Theater into an incredible video film, The River Speaks of Thirst. The River Speaks of Thirst is my first vinyl LP/CD that we produced last year. And I'm going to read some of the poems from that collection. But I want to read 2 poems about Elizabethckley and her relationship with Mary Todd Lincoln. So many of you may or may not know, but Elizabethckley was Mary Todd Lincoln. Elizabethckley was Abraham Lincoln's widow, Mary Todd Lincoln's modiste, or seamstress. Elizabethckley came to Orange County, to Hillsborough, North Carolina, by way of a minister. She was given to him as a gift from his brother. The minister was very, very poor and could not afford actually to have a slave. His family put her out to work at the Burwell School, which is a historic Burwell historical site in Hillsborough, where she did what hired slaved women do. She cooked, she cleaned, but she was an incredible seamstress. Word of her seamstress skills traveled to Washington, D.C., where eventually she made her way to Washington, D.C., and was introduced to Mary Todd Lincoln. The 2 women struck a very close relationship, close but not equal friends. Theirs was a very interesting, complicated, complex, and twisted relationship. There's much written about them. There's much scholarship on this friendship, this relationship. So the first poem is a poem that I wrote for the centennial or bicentennial, I cannot remember, of Elizabethckley's time in Hillsborough. Actually, the Historical Association wanted to call it a celebration of Elizabethckley, but for the life of me, I could not understand why we would be celebrating a life of servitude, a life of being enslaved. Elizabethckley's life in Hillsborough was very sorrowful. Elizabethckley was a very proud woman, very literate, who did not take well to being enslaved. And she was considered haughty, undisciplined, unbridled, for which she was beaten severely by the lawyer of the town of Hillsborough, Mr. Webb. The Webb house is still there. So this first poem is in a collection that I'm working on with another writer who's writing in Mary Todd Lincoln's voice, and Elizabethckley is responding. So there are many, many poems, but I'm just going to read this one in the voice of Elizabethckley. What daily things? Oh, Mary, dear noble woman, I've seen devils unleashed. When I was about 7 years old, I witnessed for the first time the sale of a human being. We were living at Prince Edward in Virginia, and Master had just purchased his hogs for the winter, for which he was unable to pay in full. To escape from his embarrassment, it was necessary to sell one of his slaves. Little Joe, the son of the cook, was selected as the victim. His mother was ordered to dress him up in his Sunday clothes and send him to the house. He came in with a bright face, was placed in the scales, and was sold, like the hogs, at so much per pound. His mother was kept in ignorance of the transaction, but her suspicions were aroused. When her son started for Petersburg in the wagon, the truth began to dawn upon her mind, and she pleaded piteously that her boy should not be taken from her. But Master quieted her, telling her that he was simply going to town with the wagon and would be back in the morning. Morning came, but little Joe did not return to his mother. Morning after morning passed, and the mother went down to the grave without ever seeing her child again. One day she was whipped for grieving for her lost boy. Colonel Burwell never liked to see one of his slaves wear a sorrowful face, and those who offended in this particular way were always punished. Oh, Mary, dear noble mothers, I've seen such polite devils. Your dusty little heads are all accounted for. No need to count their shadows at play. Only God would find them irresistible enough to eat. Saintly wolf. Sunday clothes are meant for Sunday things. Prayers and hymnals dance above the heads of your young cubs. A ride to town means a warm bed hours later. A ride to town in the wagon means sweet dreams of licorice and clove-studded oranges. A ride to town is just a ride to town, protected, adorned. Oh, Mary, dear noble sister, I've known mothers like you, dark, straight, fierce with mama storm like you, but not enough storm for the devils that steal her babies, not enough storm to chase away poisonous white man fever, not enough storm to locate and bury their tiny bones, not enough storm for the whip that counts her tears. This next piece is actually a piece that I was commissioned to write for Volume 2 of the Elizabethckley Reader, A Feast of Whispers. A Feast of Whispers. Elizabethckley was nobody's backwoods whisper. She knew that even the clothespins, sparrow feathers, blue glass, all whispered in the night, like the spider unlacing a full moon web. She gathered the very bloodline of cotton, damask, silk, linen. She worked inside of the stillness of the night, knowing that this stillness was deeper than death waiting. She becoming more of the notion of free. Each stitch, prick, between torch flight and night's light, knew how to measure a sky of neck, hips, wrist, thighs. Each stitch taught her how to tell rock from bone. each stitch, whispering. Bone hangs close to the needle. Rock pushes, slices, color, pattern, like the soles of her feet, outracing the notion of freedom. The unrecognizable voice, her own voice, crying for the loss of her son's skin, weaves into the dancing sleeve of a white woman on the brink of becoming more of the notion of free, like birds who fight the shadows of their own wings. Soft dawn whispers crown a morning that pushes back the blush of shimmering thread against the paleness of a dancing southern mistress, stupefied elegance stretched across indigo, drowned, stamped chemise, soaked in a music that erases the gentility of surrender. Mary Todd Lincoln prayed for rain clouds against a sun and blood-stained horizon that would not bend. Her only salvation in the hands of her modiste, Lizzie, slave, bonded as confidant. Her words carrying empty potions, unrecognizable as the taste of her own bondage. The master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. Lizzie offered a prayer for the prayers unanswered, for the torched, scorched, torn, damned soul of her captor. Her womb soothed a thousand lashes that wounded the sky, the grass, the river, the fire of her breath. As the story unfolds beneath her cloth, she holds the few strands of what remains of another story, hushed, folded, unwritten, like the path from arrival to departure, from him to Bodis. She sews glass buttons in between the hours that grow inside the desert of her unrecognizable heart. Two women hold back sinister nights, drink from the same cup that spills, disintegrating the only blank canvas between them. They reach for the same light, one hand burned, the other holds heat so close it frays the lace, the landscape of her whiteness, so close it becomes airborne divination. Face to face, silhouette to silhouette, they feel each other's breath, but too many years have stripped them bare of any notion of the freedom they stole from each other. They are the reflection of the same offering to a hungry God, conjuring new skirts for new dances. The prick of the thumb unleashes more than bloodstained seams, unleashes more than the shrouded dance floors of slaves in unmarked cemeteries, more than the unbearable notion of unrecognizable freedom, crawling through the very needle. Mary Todd Lincoln wears weary well, like an undressed sunrise, bulging with veins of poverty, throbbing, beckoning with the unraveling voice of petals falling. It becomes her will. She steps out of her skin for an unmeasurable fitting of her soul. One last lift of muted organza that hugs the waist perfect. She becomes her own modiste, dressing for the dance of freedom, dressing for all the denied dances of her mother, dressing for all the denied slaves, whispering from her unrecognizable voice. From a rooftop, she imagined she saw him, but then she never could decipher bone and stone, the smell of her Abe Lincoln, still lingering in the bloody fabric pressed hard against her chest, flooding parched, untamed rivers, weighing more than her drooping breast. Each stitch taught her how to tell. Each stitch taught her how to measure the heaviness of her own war. Each stitch created a forbidden game a forbidden weapon. She learned to undress and dress and redress all the shadows of her own ladies in waiting, the shadows of quivering stardust hanging from shackled branches. So I want to move into these poems that are on the album. I also want to say not most of you, many of you are saying, oh, that's not her. That's not the picture of her. Yes, I cut my hair. I really cut my hair. And no more brown hair. Death of the American Smile. She was forever channeling her mad woman in the attic alter ego. These days, new Southern damsels secretly wish they could still be the reason of my distress, like their mothers' mothers, who worried the water of my mother's mothers, who stand vigil at crossroads, thresholds, borders, like a lost cavalry without a country. I be a Black princess, the one that drags you through the sleep, that you think to be that fourth martini you needed before you could glide out of your seat and smile the American smile. Yes, that smile. The one daddy with the pedigree stable paid for. That one smile another mother's mother stitched across her dead daughter's forehead. The smile that snatches the hands of any other white hand when I lean too close. The smile that erases my smile while swallowing a whole room of dead patrimony. It is all you can do, smile, because your rusted swords no longer cut. Your puke-stained flag is shredding all over the sun-bleached Constitution. Smile, a smile. Gin and tonic in pretty little cups is still gin and tonic, carrying you up and down haunted colonial stairways, while rage persists inside your breast. Black hands in your dreams bring your mail, freshen your coffee, cut your grass, starch your gowns, love your children, carry your drunk skeleton ass from bed to bed. Your antiquated flag is the only skirt that still fits you as you zip it over festering skin, carrying a fever that boils the skin of birds who fly too close to your steaming, wretched hair. The mad woman in the attic is truly mad at you now. No more secrets for you. No more Venetian lace, no more pot de soie slippers, no more Limoges, no more buttery croissants with lemon curd. It's all going downhill from here. A museum of interchangeable smiles, masks, Spanish leather straps, braided, that force you to cry. You forget the password that unlocks your thighs. Midnight passenger on a bombed out tanker ship, headed out to find daddy's ocean liner. You bomb, murder, eat your own, but always smiling, always smiling, always smiling. Step away from the door. Step away from the door. This is not a dream. You are not your mother's mother. You do not choose the dreams I stroll into. Kneel, fetch, roll over. Good girl. Now smile for daddy. Daddy's going to make it all right again in your dreams. Oh, Father, rape me on the altar and make me confess afterwards. All the testaments inside my legs are hallowed. Be my name. Be your name. And moving on from, I think the next piece I'm going to do, and I'm paying attention to the time, we're almost there where I need to stop, but I do want to read two more pieces from this collection, because I spend a lot of time researching and sitting with documents and sometimes very personal historical documents. I have been drawn deep into the history of my great-grandfather, Caswell Holt, who was with his brother were the first Black Reconstruction sheriffs of Alamance County. And historical record documents that the two brothers, my great-grandfather and his brother, arrested a white woman downtown Burlington, North Carolina, for arresting, the two brothers arrested a white woman downtown for public drunkenness. That evening, they were dragged out of their homes by whomever, Klan, white men, and they were lynched. The hand-me-down family story, oral story, is that Black people got to Caswell, who was still alive, and they hid him and nursed him back to health. His brother did die. We know that he survived because one, we have his death date as another date. And two, we know because historical record has documented that he testified at an anti-Klan activity hearing on Capitol Hill in the 1800s. But I have been visiting the plantation, which is a historical site in Hills in Alamance County, where my father's family comes from. And I've known this for many, many years. But I've become very, very interested when I came across this story years ago. This plantation is one of the largest plantations in the Southeast, and the Holt plantation is responsible for fabric, for cloth. And their first tier of employment in their mills were enslaved people, or my father's people. So I have been interested because there is no record of all of these enslaved people who were there. And I've been looking for their burial sites, and someone has told me where they are, and I have yet to go visit, but I will. But I also have found that space. I was led to the place of the lynching. And I wanted to write about the lynching, not from the perspective of my great uncle so much, but from the perspective of the ecosystem, the perspective of the natural world that was there, bearing witness. I wanted to ask the trees. Do you remember? Were you there? Did you shudder? Did your skin cry out against the skin of my great uncle's skin? Was the smell of bark a different smell from the smell of meat flesh, human meat flesh? Beloved father, husband, lover, friend, man flesh. Could the air discern burning tongue from burning arm? Does the neck bone stay intact or grizzle like the shaft of toes, fingers, ears? I wanted to ask the trees. Were you there? Did you shudder? Are you an elder that wailed out loud when they strung him up on your youngest branch? No mercy even for the lynching of new sprawling birch limbs, just learning themselves how to crawl towards an unemancipated sky. Are you a grandchild or a great-grandchild of the tree that drank his blood, the tree that cried tears into the rope around his neck, his arms, his legs? I wanted to ask the trees, but the ground spoke first. Annoying, perfectly manicured azaleas, annoying, perfect graves of perfect skeletons, whose bloodstained hands are forever etched on the hearts of my ancestors who cry out to me. Plantation ground scratches the soles of my feet. Ancestors beg me to lie down, be still. They waited so long for this day, when someone would come and dance with their spirits. They are everywhere whispering, holding up this house that dares to ignore them, holding up a sanitized history and herstory, one for the trees, one for us. I wanted to ask the trees, do you remember? Did you refuse to hold his weight? Did your branches crackle? Did you refuse to hold him? Did you feed his blood to your roots? Who are these new trees? Look how they glisten against an unshackled firmament. Did you tell them that his blood was the only nourishment you could provide that entire season? Did you tell them it was a winter of blood, no rain, no snow, blood storms, lightning and thunder lifting other names unto the wind's tongue? So many names for the wind to carry, so much hair, teeth, bones for the ground to gather. I wanted to ask the trees, who will carry your stories? Who are your historians? Who will measure the rings of ropes that wrapped around your waist, your shoulders, under your arms, beneath your head? I wanted to ask the trees, did you forget to breathe when the red thunder inside of you painted everything the color of love? I want to ask the trees, do you remember? Do your branches still crackle with his weight? Do you shudder? Do you know mercy? It's 6:40. I'm going to read one last poem. I'd like to end with this poem in reverence for all of the many people who have been slain for no reason, except that they were brown, black, red. And in places they should have been. So this poem I'm going to read, Oh My Brother, was an invitation several years ago to join forces with a group out of New York who had created this platform called Poetry of Lamentation. And the organizers were gathering poems to send to the family members, creating a website where family members across the country, total strangers, would know that there were people holding the space of grief, of sorrow with them. And when I got that phone call, I remember having the conversation and I said, okay, I'm in. And the process was that within 24 hours or perhaps 48, you would get your person. And we were told that the person would come to you by way of an email link to a TV station or a newspaper article, but you would get your person within 48 hours. Well, when I hung up the telephone and I was walking out of the room, out of my study, I nearly fell in the hallway, realizing that I was waiting for someone to die. In less than 24 hours, I got my person. It came to me inside of an email that was literally about, I guess, a 30-second sound bite from a local TV station that only said, unidentified Black male shot to death on Route 10. More news tonight at 6. More news tonight on the 6 o'clock news. That was it. No identity, nothing about this person, no name. Oh, my brother. Oh, my brother, my brother. And let me stop. This is not only for those brothers who died years ago. This is for those children who died in the past 2 weeks, this week, who continue to die. It is for all of us. Oh, my brother, my brother. I will weep for you whenever the sun rises or falls. Your shadow has been betrayed. The red of the bullet bleeds and covers every breath of all the life you've lived. Oh, my brother, I will stand here and wail your name. Hold the bullet inside my mouth that cannot stop convulsing with pain. I will learn to swallow the spasms in your screams. I am calling my brothers and my sisters to the ground beside this river where your blood is born, where your blood runs until it is clear, until its red is spent, and it stands up like the wind and speaks into a light we cannot name. Oh, my brother, I beat my chest, pierce my hands, run back and forth naked in rain, trying to swallow this red of a bullet that knew your name, cracked open your smile, stole your hair. Oh, my brother, I weep for all I do not know about you. I weep with the bullet that is lodged in my throat, whispering its own requiem. The bullet. The red of the bullet cries out your name. The bullet whispers to me about the flowers that heard the sound. The bullet whispers to me about the sorcery of forgiveness. The bullet whispers to me about black flies staring the ground beneath your feet. Oh, my brother, who will wash your feet? Save the sand inside your shoes. Oh, my brother, where is your mother, your father? Who will help me scrape the dried blood that blocks the doorway of your heart? I want to be the water, the sweet oils that rub into the skin of you. I want to hold your bones steady so your mother can identify your face and rub the soft earlobes she's kissed 1,000 times. Oh, my brother, how must we hold your lover who wants a redemption for your skin, who searches for your lips in the dark? Oh, my brother, there is so much blood falling from the sky today, suffocating the light, suffocating the babies. I will guard your roadkill blood. If necessary, I will chew the bullet and digest metallic contradiction. I will be the shovel and the crypt. I will sing your name until the wind lifts it from my tongue and sings your legacy into the 10th degree of sound. I will wail the presence of your history through this throat that is out of rhythm. We be poets, the daughters of your winters and sons of your summers. We be ancient scribes, the architects of your sweat, your tears. My poems will be forever screaming the life of you. I dare the red of the bullet to forget. I dare the killer of you to remember. My words are the acid erasing the crime scene. My words are the softness of all the evidence of ghost hidden beneath your shirt, inside your underwear. Hungry ghost, casting your name into rivers. Oh, my brother, oh, my brother, what are the ancestors singing? Oh, my brother, you don't have to behave in your grave. Oh, my brother, call me, and these lyrics will gather names and stage your rebellion. The red of the bullet has the poetry of your spirit embedded with indelible ink. Oh, my brother, hear the wail of the red of the bullet. Hear the space between your ribs crumble. Hear the sounds in your chest become a roaring ocean. Hear the butterflies cease flying. Hear this silence that will not be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaki. Go ahead, Evie.
I just wanted to thank Jaki Shelton Green for gifting us with her poetry tonight. It just wrapped around us and carried us places we never expected to go. Thank you so very, very much. And I thank all of the people who joined us as well for this marvelous, marvelous presentation.